The sun hung low in the sky, casting a golden glow over the small ranch town. Dust swirled along the unpaved road, glinting in the late afternoon light as townsfolk lined the path. Banners of bright colors fluttered from wooden posts, and wildflowers had been woven into garlands that framed the entrance to the old barn. The air was thick with excitement and a hint of tension. At the center of it all, a wagon rolled forward, decorated with ribbons and lace, creaking under the weight of its precious cargo. Inside sat Alina, the bride. Her dress was a cascade of soft ivory fabric, delicate yet strong enough to complement her curvy frame. Her dark hair was pulled back into a simple bun, adorned with small blooms that smelled faintly of spring. Despite her radiant smile, her hands trembled slightly as she gripped the edge of the wagon. Whispers and snickers rippled through the crowd. Some couldn't resist pointing fingers, nudging each other and letting cruel jokes escape. "Do you think she'll make it?" One woman whispered, her tone sharp and judgmental. Another muttered under her breath, "She's far too heavy for that wagon. It's going to tip over." Alina heard it all. She felt the heat rise to her cheeks, but she refused to let the laughter reach her eyes. She took a deep breath, trying to steady the nervous energy that fluttered like trapped birds in her chest. She reminded herself why she was here: to marry Ethan, the man she loved, who had promised to see past the whispers, past the judgment, and love her unconditionally. The wagon jolted slightly as the wheels rolled over a small bump in the road. Alina instinctively tightened her grip, her knuckles whitening, but she forced herself to smile again. Around her, the crowd was a mixture of anticipation and amusement, and she knew that some were already imagining the worst. Yet amid the snickers, Alina felt a flicker of pride. She was walking down the road she had dreamed of since childhood, wearing the dress she had longed for, surrounded by the people she loved, even if some of the onlookers couldn't understand her worth. Her heart pounded, not from fear, but from the knowledge that this moment, this ride in the wagon, was hers to own, no matter what anyone thought. The wagon creaked once more, carrying her closer to the barn where vows awaited. Little did she know, in just moments, her life would change in a way she could never have anticipated. The wagon rolled forward slowly, the wheels crunching over the uneven dirt path. Alina's heart thumped loudly in her chest, each beat a reminder that this was supposed to be her happiest day. The barn, decorated with ribbons and flowers, was just ahead, promising warmth, celebration, and the vows she had been dreaming of for months. But the road had other plans. A deep rut suddenly appeared under the wagon's wheel, and with a sickening jolt, the wagon lurched violently to one side. Alina's breath caught in her throat. She grabbed the side of the wagon with both hands, trying to steady herself, but the momentum was too strong. The wheel hit another bump and the wagon tipped further. Panic surged through her as she felt herself slipping. Then with a heavy thud, she fell. Her fall seemed to last forever, her dress catching on the edges of the wagon, her arms flailing instinctively, but gravity won. Alina hit the ground hard, the impact jarring her shoulders and knees. The dust rose in clouds around her, coating her dress and hair, and for a moment the world seemed to freeze. And then came the laughter. It started as a few chuckles, but quickly swelled into cruel amusement that echoed down the road. "I told you that wagon couldn't hold her," one voice shouted. "She's far too heavy," another sneered, laughter dripping with mockery. Fingers pointed and faces twisted in gleeful judgment. Alina's cheeks burned with shame, tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. She wanted to vanish into the dust beneath her, to disappear from the cruel, mocking gazes. Her heart ached, not just from the fall, but from the realization that strangers could be so cruel. She scrambled to sit up, trying to adjust her gown, and murmured softly to herself, I'm fine. It's just a fall." But the laughter wouldn't stop. Some of the townsfolk leaned forward, whispering to one another, their amusement feeding off her discomfort. Alina's hands trembled as she pressed them to her lap, willing herself to breathe, to remain composed, to survive the humiliation. Then, just as despair threatened to swallow her, a shadow appeared at the edge of the crowd, a tall figure moving with purpose, eyes locked on her. The laughter faltered for a moment, replaced by a sense of tension as the stranger approached. Alina, still sitting in the dust, lifted her head slightly, noticing his presence. She didn't know him, but there was something in the way he walked, calm yet commanding, that made the crowd quiet. Somewhere deep inside, Alina felt the faintest flicker of hope. Perhaps this fall and the laughter that followed wouldn't define her after all. The laughter lingered in the air, sharp and cruel as Alina sat in the dust, her gown smudged and torn in places. Her heart pounded, not just from the fall, but from the weight of every mocking glance she could feel burning into her. She lowered her eyes, wishing the ground could swallow her when a tall, broad-shouldered figure emerged from the edge of the crowd. He moved with calm authority, each step purposeful, boots crunching over the dirt road. He wore a simple plaid shirt, the sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms, and a wide-brimmed cowboy hat that shaded his face. Dust clung to his jeans, and his presence seemed untamed yet controlled, like a storm held back by sheer will. The crowd fell silent as he approached, some instinctively stepping aside, sensing that this man commanded respect without a word. He stopped just a few feet away from Alina, his gaze softening as it met hers. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice steady, neither condescending nor rushed. The calmness in his tone was disarming. Alina blinked, unsure if she was dreaming. I'm fine," she stammered, her hands clutching the edge of the wagon for support. "I just fell." "You don't look fine," he said, bending slightly at the knees, not to loom over her, but to meet her at eye level. His eyes, a warm hazel, carried a quiet determination that made her heart flutter, in spite of the embarrassment. "Come on, let's get you up." Without waiting for her to protest, he stepped closer. His movements were careful, deliberate, reassuring. Alina felt her pulse quicken as he extended a strong hand toward her. She hesitated, still aware of the eyes upon her, the sneers, the whispers, but something in him told her it was safe. She took his hand and he pulled her gently to her feet, steadying her like she weighed nothing at all. The crowd's laughter faltered as they watched him stand there, holding her upright with effortless strength. He didn't flinch at her size, didn't comment on it. Instead, his gaze swept over the audience, and his voice rang out clear and commanding. "The only shame here is on those who mock someone for being human, for carrying a heart bigger than all of their ridicule." A hush fell over the crowd. The mocking faces now shifted, some guilty, some ashamed, others unsure how to respond. Alina felt warmth bloom in her chest, not just from being saved, but from being seen. For the first time since the fall, she didn't feel small. She felt noticed. She felt worthy. And standing there, supported by a stranger who radiated kindness and strength, she realized that this man, this rancher, was about to change everything. The laughter that had tormented Alina moments ago evaporated instantly. The crowd froze as Ryder stepped closer, his movements calm and purposeful. He didn't hesitate or fumble. Every motion conveyed quiet confidence. Reaching down, he slid one arm firmly under Alina's legs and the other around her back. Alina's eyes widened. Her heartbeat quickened. She had expected struggle, awkwardness, perhaps even more embarrassment. Instead, she felt herself lifted effortlessly. It was as though gravity no longer applied to her, as though Ryder's strength and care had created a bubble of safety around her. The people who had mocked her moments ago went silent, their faces shifting from amusement to shock, then unease. Ryder stood tall, holding her close yet securely. The weight she had feared would be a burden seemed non-existent. His hazel eyes met hers, steady and unwavering. And for the first time since the fall, Alina felt seen not for her size but for her courage, her heart, her very being. Then his voice rang out clear and commanding, cutting through the dusty air. "The only shame here," he said, glancing around the crowd, "is on those who mock someone for simply existing, for having a heart bigger than all of your ridicule combined." The words struck like a lightning bolt. Laughter had no place now. The mocking whispers that had once fueled cruelty were replaced with uneasy silence. Faces that had been twisted with amusement now flushed with shame. Some lowered their eyes, realizing how cruel they had been. Others exchanged guilty glances, unsure how to respond. Alina's cheeks burned again, but this time it wasn't shame. It was a strange warmth spreading through her chest. She felt supported, valued, and protected. For the first time in a long while, she felt strong. Not because of what she could do, but because someone else saw her worth without judgment, without conditions. Ryder adjusted his hold, ensuring she was steady and secure. "You don't have to be afraid of falling," he said softly, almost a whisper meant only for her. "You don't have to let their laughter define you." For the first time since stepping into the wagon, Alina smiled, not nervously, not timidly, but truly. She realized that this moment, painful and humiliating at first, had become the turning point of her day. The fall hadn't defined her. The crowd's cruelty hadn't defined her. Only she, and now the kindness of this man who had lifted her could define what came next. Standing there in his arms, she felt the world shift beneath her feet in the best possible way. The dusty road seemed to hold its breath. After Ryder's words, the laughter and whispers that had once surrounded Alina evaporated, leaving a weighty silence. Faces that had been twisted in mockery now looked uncertain, some guilty, some shocked. The energy of the crowd had shifted, as if a single ripple had passed through, changing everyone's perception in an instant. Alina remained in Ryder's arms, still flushed from both the fall and the intensity of the moment. For the first time, she realized she didn't have to shrink or apologize for simply existing. Ryder's steady grip, his calm presence, and the firmness of his voice had created a protective bubble around her, a bubble that made the cruelty of the crowd seem powerless. A few onlookers shifted uncomfortably. Mothers pulled their children a little closer, realizing that their laughter might have set a terrible example. Elders who had sneered now lowered their heads, murmuring apologies to themselves. Even some of Alina's distant relatives, who had joined in the ridicule, avoided her eyes, their shame visible in every hesitant step. Ryder's gaze never left hers. He didn't need to say another word. His strength and unwavering attention conveyed exactly what she needed to hear. She was worthy of respect, of care, of dignity. Alina felt her chest rise and fall with a newfound steadiness. The shame that had weighed on her like a heavy cloak was being lifted, replaced with confidence she hadn't felt in years. Then slowly a few voices emerged from the silence, timid and unsure. We shouldn't have laughed," one woman admitted, her voice quivering. She's a good woman," said another, almost whispering. The words were small, hesitant, but they were the first signs of acknowledgement, a subtle shift toward recognition of her value. Alina's lips curved into a genuine smile, small but powerful. She realized that the world could not diminish her unless she allowed it. Ryder's presence had reminded her that strength and kindness could speak louder than mockery, that one person's courage could quiet an entire crowd. For the first time that day, she straightened her shoulders, standing a little taller in Ryder's arms. She no longer feared the judgment around her. Instead, she felt a quiet pride, a sense that she could face whatever came next. The crowd had been silenced, yes, but more importantly, so had her own doubts. In that moment, Alina understood something profound. Sometimes it takes a single act of courage, a single voice of defiance to remind everyone, including herself, of true dignity. The barn doors creaked as Ryder gently guided Alina inside, away from the judgmental eyes and stifled whispers of the crowd. The warm, golden light of the setting sun filtered through the gaps in the wooden walls, dust motes floating lazily in the beams, the scent of hay mixed with the faint aroma of flowers from the wedding decorations, creating a comforting atmosphere that contrasted sharply with the harshness of the outside world. Ryder helped Alina to a sturdy wooden bench near the corner, adjusting her dress carefully to keep it from bunching uncomfortably. "Take a seat," he said softly, his voice calm, reassuring. "You took quite a fall." Alina lowered herself onto the bench, feeling the ache in her knees and shoulders. She pressed her hands to her dress, as if holding herself together, and glanced down. I'm okay," she murmured, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her. Ryder crouched slightly in front of her, examining her with attentive eyes. "You twisted your ankle a little when you fell," he said, gently brushing a strand of hair from her face. "It doesn't look broken, but you should be careful when you walk." Alina's eyes widened. You really noticed?" she whispered, almost embarrassed by how much relief his attention brought her. She had expected pity or dismissal, maybe even a patronizing comment, but not this quiet, unshakable care. "Of course I noticed," Ryder replied, "and I wouldn't have left you there for anyone else to judge or laugh at. That's not how people should be treated." His gaze softened. "Not today. Not ever." For a long moment, Alina just stared at him, her heart racing in ways she couldn't explain. There was something in his presence that made the ache of the fall fade slightly, replaced by a sense of safety and unexpected warmth. The embarrassment from the crowd's laughter seemed distant now, almost surreal. I don't know what to say," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "You don't need to say anything," he replied, shaking his head with a faint smile. "Just take a breath. Let yourself be okay for a moment." "That's enough." Alina exhaled slowly, feeling the tension in her shoulders ease for the first time that day. She realized that Ryder had done more than help her physically. He had reminded her of her worth, her dignity, and her ability to rise above cruelty. Sitting there, bathed in the soft light of the barn, Alina allowed herself to feel something she hadn't felt in a long time: hope. Alina sat on the bench, still feeling the lingering ache from her fall, but more acutely the warmth of Ryder's presence. The barn was quiet except for the soft creak of the wooden beams and the faint rustle of hay stirred by a gentle breeze. For a moment she just stared at him, unsure how to bridge the gap between gratitude and the strange, fluttering feelings rising in her chest. "You don't even know me," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly, her hands twisted nervously in her lap, the fabric of her dress wrinkling under her fingers. Why would you go out of your way to help me like that?" Ryder paused, his gaze steady and calm, and he gave a small, reassuring smile. "Actually," he said, "I do know you. I've seen you around the ranch store every Sunday, always carrying groceries or helping the stray dogs outside. You always have a kind word or a smile for everyone, even when they don't deserve it." Alina's eyes widened in surprise. You noticed that?" she asked softly, her voice barely audible. "I noticed," he replied firmly. "And I noticed something else too." His expression softened just a fraction, revealing a hint of vulnerability beneath his confident exterior. "I noticed that no one should ever make you feel small. Not today, not ever. You deserve better than the laughter, the whispers, the judgment. And if I can help, even in just this moment, I will." Alina's lips parted, a mix of astonishment and quiet emotion welling up inside her. She hadn't expected anyone to truly see her not like this. Not her kindness, not her heart, not the way she carried herself in a world that was often cruel. Her chest felt tight, her pulse quickening, but not from fear. This was a different kind of tension, one that left her feeling alive, noticed and strangely safe. I don't know what to say," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've never had someone look at me like that before." "You don't need to say anything," Ryder said gently. "Just know that you are seen, you are valued, and you are more than enough, just as you are." For the first time in a long while, Alina felt her walls start to crumble. The hurt from the crowd, the shame from the fall, and the fear she had carried for so long began to fade in the warmth of his words. In that quiet barn, away from the mocking eyes, she realized something profound. Sometimes, recognition and kindness from one person can heal more than 1,000 apologies. Her heart fluttered, and she couldn't help but smile, a real unguarded smile. Outside the barn, the crowd had fallen into an uneasy quiet. The energy that had been buzzing with amusement and cruel whispers only moments ago was replaced with an awkward tension. Eyes that had danced with laughter now darted nervously toward one another. Some lowered their heads in guilt, while others shifted uncomfortably on their feet, unsure how to face what had just happened. Alina sat inside the barn, still supported by Ryder. But even from the doorway, the subtle shift in the crowd was noticeable. Mothers pulled their children closer, muttering under their breath, realizing they had set a poor example by joining in the laughter. Fathers whispered hurried apologies to friends unable to meet her eyes. Even distant relatives, who had previously leaned in to mock her stumble, looked away, their faces red with shame. A few voices emerged, small and tentative, breaking the silence. We shouldn't have laughed," a woman admitted softly, almost as if speaking aloud might validate the truth. Another whispered, "She's a kind woman, and brave. Far braver than we are." These hesitant acknowledgments were tiny sparks, but in the silence that followed Ryder's intervention, they felt monumental. Alina's heart lifted. For the first time that day, she realized that the crowd's opinion no longer had power over her. She could feel the weight of their judgment begin to crumble, replaced with the awareness that kindness and courage always shine through cruelty. Ryder's presence beside her had amplified that realization. His steady gaze, his protective strength, had not only lifted her physically but had reminded everyone, silently yet unmistakably, of the importance of respect. Some of the guests started murmuring apologies to one another, awkward and hesitant but sincere. A few even tried to make eye contact with Alina, offering small, quiet gestures of recognition. She didn't need them to understand everything. She only needed to see that the ridicule had lost its power, that she had risen above it. The crowd's energy had shifted from judgment to reflection. Laughter and mockery were replaced with contemplation, shame, and for some, admiration. They had witnessed more than a fall. They had witnessed dignity, courage, and the quiet power of one person standing for another. Alina straightened her shoulders, a genuine, confident smile on her face. She understood now that being laughed at didn't define her, and seeing the crowd's transformation only reinforced her newfound strength. She was no longer merely the bride who fell from the wagon. She was a woman whose heart and courage had silenced a room full of judgment. The barn doors swung open slowly, and the soft light of the late afternoon spilled inside, illuminating Alina and Ryder as they stood together. Outside, the crowd had quieted, still murmuring in disbelief at what they had witnessed. Some avoided her gaze entirely, while others looked on with newfound respect. For the first time, Alina felt a strange calm settle over her, a confidence she hadn't known she could possess in front of so many eyes. Ryder looked down at her, a small, reassuring smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Alina," he said gently, extending his hand, "if you'll allow me, I'd like to walk you down the aisle myself." Alina froze, her heart catching in her chest. She blinked, unsure she had heard correctly. "But we barely even," she began, her voice trailing off. He shook his head, a soft, firm gesture that left no room for misunderstanding. "Sometimes, you don't need years to recognize kindness, strength, and a heart that deserves respect," he said. His voice was steady, unwavering. "Sometimes one moment is enough to know someone sees you as you truly are." Alina's cheeks warmed, a mix of surprise, relief, and something deeper she couldn't quite name. She glanced toward the crowd, still watching silently. For the first time, she didn't feel embarrassed or small. Ryder's presence beside her had shifted something inside her, giving her courage she hadn't realized she could find so quickly. She took a deep breath, feeling the strength in his offer and the sincerity in his eyes. Slowly, she placed her hand in his. His grip was strong but gentle, firm yet comforting, a perfect balance that made her feel steady, on her feet despite the chaos that had unfolded moments ago. The murmurs from the crowd grew softer, and some even stepped back, giving them space. Alina felt a rush of clarity. This was her moment, her choice, her path. No one else's opinion mattered. Not the laughter, not the whispers, not the judgment. She was stepping forward into something new, something brave, and Ryder would be there beside her. With a small nod, Alina allowed him to lead her toward the aisle. Every step felt lighter than the one before, and each movement seemed to carry away the remnants of humiliation, replacing it with pride and courage. She realized then that sometimes, life's most unexpected moments could lead to the most meaningful beginnings. As they reached the altar, Ryder leaned slightly closer and whispered, just for her ears, "You deserve a love stronger than their laughter." "And I'm ready to give it." Alina's heart swelled. For the first time that day, she felt truly seen, truly valued, and ready to embrace what lay ahead. The barn doors opened wider, letting the last rays of the setting sun spill across the dirt path and the gathered guests. Alina walked beside Ryder, her hand firmly in his, each step steady and confident. The wagon incident, the cruel laughter, the humiliating fall, all of it felt like a distant memory now, replaced by the warmth and assurance radiating from the man at her side. The crowd, once so loud with ridicule, now watched in stunned silence. Eyes that had been sharp with mockery softened with awe. Mothers whispered to children about kindness. Fathers exchanged reflective glances, and even the most judgmental onlookers seemed unable to meet Alina's gaze. She realized that the way Ryder had treated her, without hesitation, without fear, without judgment, had shifted something in everyone who had witnessed it. As they approached the altar, Alina held her head high. The pride swelling in her chest was unlike anything she had ever felt. No longer the obese bride who fell, she was a woman who had faced ridicule, been lifted, both literally and figuratively, and emerged with her dignity intact. She felt a quiet, unshakable strength flowing through her, a confidence that came from knowing she had been truly seen and respected. Ryder walked beside her, guiding her gently but never overshadowing her. His presence was steady, reassuring, and protective, yet it allowed her to shine in her own right. When they reached the altar, he turned to her, his hazel eyes reflecting both admiration and gentle affection. "You are remarkable," he said softly, his voice low, meant only for her. "Brave, kind, and strong. Today you've shown everyone what truly matters, courage, heart, and dignity." Alina smiled, her eyes glistening. "And you've shown me that someone can see all of that." "And care," she whispered. Ryder squeezed her hand gently. "It's more than care," he said. It's respect, admiration, and the start of something genuine. As the ceremony began, the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with shades of pink and gold. Alina and Ryder stood together, not just as bride and companion walking her down the aisle, but as two people beginning a journey built on mutual respect, courage, and the promise of love. The crowd watched quietly, some moved to tears, as Alina and Ryder exchanged their vows of commitment, not just to a moment, but to each other and the new chapter unfolding before them. In that moment, the laughter, the judgment, and the shame of earlier vanished completely. Alina realized with a heart full of hope that this was not just a wedding, it was the start of a life in which she would always be seen, valued, and cherished. And for the first time, she felt completely free.